Imagine one sentence. I'm the boss here, blowing up an entire life in a room that usually deals with broken meters and faded yellow tickets. The morning session in municipal court is supposed to be routine. The air smells of old polish and wet coats. People shift on scarred wooden benches that have heard more excuses than hymns. Papers rustle, a clerk flips through files. Microphones give a soft metallic buzz as they're tested. Low conversation rolls through the room like distant traffic. Then the door on the left opens. He walks in as if this isn't a court at all, but a boardroom he bought years ago. Mid-40s, tailored jacket hanging open, expensive watch catching the fluorescent light. No hesitation, no glance around. His stride is measured, almost lazy, the gait of a man who has never had to hurry for anyone. A few heads turn, then more. Someone whispers, "That's him," and the murmur flattens into silence. He doesn't look at the judge. He doesn't look at the flag. He looks straight ahead, like everything in this room is background. The clerk calls the case. State of Rhode Island versus Daniel Kessler. Multiple unpaid parking violations, including restricted zone parking. Kessler drops into his spot at the defendant's table, one arm over the back of the chair. His assistant stands a step behind, clutching a leather folder, eyes fixed on the floor. Judge Caprio glances down at the file, then up at the man in front of him. His voice is warm, steady. "Good morning, sir." Kessler doesn't return the courtesy. "Let's make it quick," he says, without lifting his eyes to the bench. "I'm busy." The line lands in the hush like a glass set too hard on a table. A woman in the second row inhales sharply. An older man shifts, jaw tightening. Caprio doesn't bristle. He simply closes the folder with one finger, giving himself a heartbeat of pause. "This is your morning right now," he replies. No edge, just a hint of iron underneath. On the screen to his side, frozen images show a sleek sedan nosed up against blue curb paint, a wheelchair symbol half covered by a front tire. A no parking sign leans into the frame like an eyewitness. To be clear, the judge continues, "You have several open tickets. One involves a space reserved for disabled drivers. Do you understand the charges?" Kessler exhales through his nose, a tiny sound of impatience. He flicks two fingers toward his assistant, as if sending a waiter away. "I run 3 companies," he says. "I don't have time to argue about where a car sat for 5 minutes. I'm the boss here, not you." The words are quiet, but the arrogance behind them is loud enough for the back row. There's a soft, "Oh, boy," from somewhere near the door. The assistant's shoulders tense. He stares harder at the floor. Caprio's face doesn't change. No raised voice, no theatrical reaction. Only his eyes sharpen, the way they do when something important has just been said. "We'll see about that," he answers, almost gently. In that instant, everyone in the room feels it. This isn't going to be just another ticket and a shrug. Something larger than a parking fine has just stepped into the case and taken a seat beside Daniel Kessler. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Judge Caprio lets the silence settle before he speaks again, his tone even, almost conversational. "Mr. Kessler, before we go any further, tell me a bit about yourself." The request seems to irritate him more than any fine could. He leans back, arms crossing loosely. What does that have to do with a parking ticket? His laugh is short, metallic, the sound of someone used to brushing off questions. Caprio doesn't answer the challenge. He simply waits. Something about the pause pulls a few eyes toward Kessler. His assistant stands stiffly behind him, hands clasped too tight. A woman in the second row tilts her head, listening. Kessler sighs as if indulging a child. "Fine. I built my first business at 24. Turned a failing warehouse line into a regional distributor. Now I oversee more employees than this whole city hall employs." He pushes a cuff back, revealing a gold watch. "My father always said, don't let small people slow you down. So I don't." A ripple moves through the crowd, hardly a sound, but unmistakable. Not anger, recognition. Many in the room have worked under men who spoke exactly that way. Caprio folds his hands. "Did your father teach you anything else?" The question catches Kessler off guard. For a moment, his eyes shift, unfocused, as if pulled back decades. "He taught me to win," he finally mutters. "To never show weakness." There's a faint crack in his voice he did not intend. He clears his throat sharply, straightening. "Anyway, none of this matters. I have companies depending on me, deadlines. But you're here, Caprio says gently, which means it matters enough. Kessler's jaw tightens. He glances at his assistant, seeking reinforcement, but the young man is staring at the floor. Someone in the gallery whispers, "He was in the news last spring." Another adds, "That loan fraud thing didn't stick." The hum stops as soon as Caprio raises a hand for quiet. "Mr. Kessler," he continues, "who is the man standing behind you?" "My executive aide," Kessler says instantly. The assistant flinches, so small a movement it might go unnoticed, except that the officer near the aisle watches him closely. Caprio turns to the young man. "Sir, are you his aide?" The assistant hesitates. His voice barely makes it past his throat. "I'm his driver, and sometimes he asks me to run errands." "What kind of errands?" Kessler interrupts, too quickly. This is irrelevant. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. Let him answer. The driver swallows. Dropping off documents. Picking up dry cleaning. Paying fines. Parking the car when he doesn't want to be seen. Every word chips at the mask Kessler wore so confidently minutes earlier. The judge nods slowly. "So you are the one who usually handles the tickets?" "Yes, Your Honor." A low murmur spreads through the benches. It isn't shock, it's confirmation. People who have lived long enough can spot the shape of a pattern forming. Kessler exhales sharply, a flash of frustration breaking through. "I have a lot of pressure on me. Hundreds of people depend on what I do. I can't spend my days worrying about meters and signs. That's why I have staff." For the first time, something vulnerable edges into his tone, a weariness he instantly tries to hide. Caprio studies him for a moment, then says quietly, "Power doesn't excuse responsibility, sir. It only makes its absence more visible." Kessler looks away, not dismissively this time, but because he doesn't want anyone to see that the words landed. Judge Caprio leans slightly forward, adjusting his glasses as he reviews the printed citations. The quiet in the room tightens, like everyone senses the shift, the part where this small case stops feeling small. "Mr. Kessler," he says, tapping one page with a fingertip, "why do you have 6 unpaid tickets in a restricted zone?" Kessler answers too quickly, as if speed could outrun scrutiny. "I travel for business. I'm barely in the state." Caprio lifts another sheet. "Then explain why every ticket was issued on weekdays between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. The businessman's jaw works, searching for something that sounds reasonable. "I have deliveries. My staff drives the car. Sometimes they forget regulations." He glances at his driver, a warning disguised as a plea. The driver stares at the floor again. Caprio continues, calm but surgical. "And you claim you were out of town during these times?" "Yes," Kessler snaps. The judge turns to the officer seated to his right. "Officer Romero, you issued citation number 4, correct?" Romero nods. "Yes, Your Honor." "Was Mr. Kessler driving that day?" Romero exhales, almost disappointed to say it out loud. "No, sir. It was his driver." A ripple moves through the crowd, the kind that comes when people hear the truth they already suspected. A woman in the second row straightens, her pen pausing mid-scratch. A retired firefighter at the back mutters, "Knew it." Kessler rolls his shoulders, trying to reclaim the upper hand. "He works for me. It's essentially the same thing." Caprio lowers his gaze. "No, Mr. Kessler. It's not." The air becomes heavy, dense. His voice is soft, but the softness only sharpens the impact. The judge flips to another document. "One more question. Who was driving your vehicle the day citation number 6 was issued?" Kessler hesitates. "My staff handles logistics." "That wasn't my question." A beat of silence. The driver finally speaks, his voice tremoring. "It was me. He told me to park close. Said he'd only be a minute." "How long was he inside?" Caprio asks. The driver closes his eyes briefly. 42 minutes, Your Honor." A few in the gallery gasp. Someone whispers, "That's not a minute." Kessler's posture stiffens, anger brewing beneath the surface. "I had a meeting. A critical one. I can't circle blocks like some." He stops himself, but too late. The insult hangs in the air. Several heads turn sharply his way. Caprio looks at him with a stillness that feels like judgment before the verdict. "Sir, dignity is not measured by how many minutes you're willing to walk." The businessman opens his mouth, but nothing comes. The judge rests the paperwork on his desk. "Officer Romero, were you aware of anything unusual when issuing these tickets?" Romero nods slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." He made a comment to me. What did he say? Romero clears his throat, uncomfortable. He said, "Tickets are for people who can't afford lawyers." A wave of mixed reactions sweeps the room. Disbelief, laughter, irritation. A man in the back lets out a dry chuckle. A woman shakes her head, arms crossed tightly. Kessler lifts his chin as if trying to reclaim dignity. I don't recall saying that. Romero's voice stays steady. You said it while looking me right in the eye. The judge waits until the murmurs fade, then speaks with a tone that seems to fill every beam of the old courtroom. Mr. Kessler, you are not on trial for your money. A pause, deliberate and weighty. You're on trial for your attitude. The room stills completely. The businessman, for the first time, looks uncertain, like a man realizing that the thing he always relied on, the shield he believed indestructible, is cracking right in front of everyone. And the tension shifts, not outward toward the crowd, but inward, toward the truth that's finally catching up to him. Caprio pauses for a moment, eyes shifting from the stack of citations to the man standing behind the defendant. His voice remains quiet, but something in it sharpens like the click of a safety being switched off. I want to hear from the gentleman who was driving your car. The driver flinches. A small, involuntary motion, shoulders tightening, hands clasping each other as if to keep them from trembling. Kessler immediately leans forward. He works for me. He has nothing to add here. Caprio doesn't raise his voice, but the temperature in the room drops. Sir, you don't make those decisions in this courtroom. It lands like a hammer blow. Several people murmur. One woman whispers, finally. Kessler's confident expression cracks, a thin line of irritation flashing across his face. The driver steps to the microphone, eyes still lowered. Caprio gives him a gentle nod, the first warmth shown in several minutes. Tell the court what you know, the judge says. The man exhales, slow and shaky. He told me to park wherever he needed. Loading zones, disabled spots didn't matter. A faint gasp spreads through the gallery. I asked him about the tickets once, the driver continues. He said paying them would encourage laziness in the system. And he made it clear I should take the blame if anything came up. Caprio's gaze flickers to Kessler, whose jaw tightens enough to whiten the skin around it. The driver swallows. He told me, if you ever embarrass me, I'll destroy your career. I believed him. Someone in the back breathes out. Oh my God. An elderly man shakes his head slowly, disappointment etched across his features. Before the tension can settle, a voice rises from the right side of the room. Your Honor, may I speak? A man in his late 60s stands, wiry, weathered, wearing a faded work jacket. He looks like he spent his life lifting boxes, not filing complaints. Caprio studies him for a moment, then gestures him forward. The man grips the bench for balance. He parked in my loading zone for months, he says. Every day I asked him to move. Every day he told me he'd buy the street if I didn't shut up. The gallery stirs again, anger, sympathy, recognition. This is the America older viewers know intimately. Small businesses crushed under the heel of the wealthy. Kessler snaps. That's ridiculous. Caprio raises a finger slightly. Do not interrupt. The older man nods toward the driving videos projected on the screen. There were days when my deliveries were blocked. I lost clients over it. The judge turns back to the officer. Show the footage. The screen lights up, time-stamped images of Kessler's car wedged diagonally across marked lanes, hazard lights blinking lazily. Another clip shows an ambulance trying to maneuver around the obstruction, its driver irritated, forced to reverse and try again. A woman in the audience speaks softly, shaken. That could have cost a life. Kessler's voice spikes. This is being blown out of proportion. Caprio doesn't flinch. No, sir, he replies, almost whispering, and somehow more devastating for it. This is proportion. A silence drops over the room like a weighted sheet. The only sound is the faint clicking of someone's pen against a notebook, a tiny nervous rhythm in a space that suddenly feels too small. For the first time since the hearing began, the businessman looks less like a titan and more like a man who finally sees the cliff beneath his feet. And everyone in the room understands. He has crossed a line he can no longer walk back from. The courtroom is so quiet the air feels suspended, as if even the dust motes hesitate to move. Caprio, composed as ever, leans back slightly and folds his hands. Let's gather the full picture, he says. He gestures to the clerk, who brings forward a thin stack of documents. Nothing flashy, just ordinary papers that somehow carry the weight of half a lifetime of behavior. Caprio flips through them slowly, page by page, like someone reconstructing a puzzle whose outline he already knows. 6 citations, he begins. Multiple restricted zones. A disabled access space. A loading zone. Emergency lanes. He sets the top sheet aside, and each time, someone else paid the price. Kessler shifts in his chair. Those tickets are irrelevant. This is overreach. Is it? Caprio asks. His tone is mild, but the question hangs heavy. A second envelope lands on the judge's desk, handed over by the nervous former driver. Inside are copies of emails, written in the stiff, cramped handwriting of someone trying to be respectful while terrified. One reads, "Sir," the business owner asked again. "I'm worried." Another, "Sir, the ambulance couldn't get through today." And finally, "Sir, please. My wife has another procedure coming up. I need this job." Caprio studies that last line for several seconds. When he looks up, his eyes aren't angry, they're sorrowful. He addresses the driver gently. "Your wife? How is she?" The man hesitates, voice fragile. "She's fighting. Heart complications. We're in and out of the hospital every week." A ripple of emotion moves through the gallery. Older viewers feel it most. They know hospital corridors, insurance battles, parking lots where every minute matters. Kessler mutters, "This is irrelevant." The judge's gaze sharpens. "Sir, this is entirely relevant. Because your choices put pressure on a man already carrying more than anyone should." The businessman's mask slips another inch. Then the officer steps forward. "Your Honor," he says, "we actually warned him before one of those citations. He told us." He glances at Kessler, then decides to say it anyway. "You're wasting your breath." A low murmur travels across the room, disbelief mixed with disappointment. Caprio doesn't react with theatrics. He simply exhales and turns the page. "And now," he says, "we come to your filings." Kessler stiffens. "These are public records," Caprio adds, anticipating the argument. "Tax filings connected to the vehicle in question." He lays out a few sheets. The car is listed as a business asset, travel expenses. But on the dates of the citations, you reported being in New York. Kessler tries to speak, but no words form. His mouth opens, then closes again. Which means, Caprio continues softly, "Either you misreported travel expenses, or you lied to this court earlier." The silence that follows is blistering. A woman in the gallery whispers, "This is bad." A man next to her nods. "Real bad." For a moment, Kessler looks almost lost, as if the world he built, brick, by charm and intimidation, has begun crumbling under its own weight. The driver clears his throat. Everyone turns as he wipes his eyes with the back of his hand. "I never wanted trouble," he says. "I just needed work. Needed insurance." He glances at Kessler. "I thought he'd help me someday." The betrayal in that sentence sinks deep. Caprio's voice becomes a steady anchor in the storm. "This court is not here to punish your wealth. It is here to measure your conduct." He closes the folder. "And what I see is a pattern of entitlement, of disregard, of harm." Kessler whispers, almost to himself, "I didn't mean for any of this." Caprio answers with unshakable clarity. "That, sir, is exactly how damage is done." The entire room feels the weight of those words, like a gavel already falling, even though the verdict hasn't yet been spoken. And everyone knows. The final reckoning is coming. The room holds its breath. Caprio sits perfectly still, palms resting on the bench, eyes steady on the man before him. A man who has spent a lifetime convincing himself he was untouchable. "Mr. Kessler," he says quietly, "power doesn't grant immunity. It grants responsibility." The businessman straightens as if bracing for a financial blow, a massive fine, a public shaming, something he can combat with lawyers or write off as an inconvenience. But Caprio does not talk numbers. He talks humanity. "You've told this court you're the boss. You've said people listen because you control them. But leadership," he pauses, letting the word breathe, "is not domination. It is stewardship." Kessler swallows hard. The judge continues, tone even, almost gentle, which makes it more devastating. "This is not about ruining you. It is about redirecting you." A few people in the gallery shift forward, sensing something unexpected. Caprio folds his hands. Your financial penalty is $150. A stunned silence spreads across the room. Even Kessler looks confused. Then, the turn. However, Caprio adds, you will reimburse the small business owner for every day his loading zone was obstructed by your vehicle. The older man in the bomber jacket blinks, stunned. You will also cover the cost of the driver's wife's next medical procedure, entirely and without delay. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. Someone lets out a soft, astonished, "Oh, wow." Kessler's face falls, not from outrage, but from realization. This isn't punishment by money. It's accountability he cannot outsource. Caprio isn't finished. You will personally deliver those payments, he adds, and you will do so with an apology that acknowledges your actions, without excuses. The driver covers his mouth with his hand, trying not to cry. His shoulders shake once, then twice. In the back row, someone starts clapping, a single, tentative sound. Another joins. Then the gallery rises into warm, respectful applause. Not triumphant, not mocking, human. Caprio raises a hand, and the room quiets. He looks at Kessler, really looks at him. You believed rules applied to others. Today, you learned they apply to all of us. Kessler finally speaks, voice stripped of pretense. I'm sorry. I truly didn't see what I was doing. I thought it didn't matter. For many years, Caprio replies, it didn't. Because people were afraid to speak up. But they spoke today, and you listened. That is the beginning of change. The words settle over the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The driver steps forward, trembling. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. He turns to Kessler. And thank you, sir. This will help us more than you know. Kessler nods, unable to meet his eyes for long. Caprio stands, a rare gesture. When he speaks, his voice has the quiet authority of someone who has lived long enough to understand human weakness and long enough to know people can rise above it. No one here wishes you harm, Mr. Kessler. We wish you honesty, accountability, and the courage to be better than the power you wield. He steps back, hands resting on the bench. Then the final line, the one the entire courtroom will remember. We do not control everyone, but each of us controls the kind of person we choose to be. Silence, deep, reverent, fills the room. Kessler exhales shakily, nods once, and walks toward the officer to begin making arrangements. The driver wipes his eyes. The small business owner leans on his cane and quietly says, maybe he'll turn out all right. Caprio smiles faintly, the kind of smile that believes in second chances, but never in shortcuts. And as the door closes behind the businessman, the courtroom feels lighter, as though justice didn't only correct a wrong, but eased a burden everyone had been carrying. A reckoning, yes, but also a beginning.